Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Coming up, my son, inshallah, is going to share more of what he's picked up from going straight to a third world nation for his first trip abroad. Um, Now, granted, coming from the Gulf Coast, that could be kind of third worldish, but what he had to go was worse. Um, we're going to see how that works out, though. In any case, I also would like to tell y'all that I'm with Crimson Cure in terms of her take on, I think her name is Moriah Mills, the one that had that issue going on with Zion Williamson. And I heard the clip of her talking. I'm going to tell you guys straight away, gentlemen, one of the reasons that even Zion Williamson is not looking at a better selection than what he is looking at is, if we're going to be honest about it, it's largely because um, they've been allowed to talk the way that they've talked all this time. They've been allowed to sit up and say dumb and stupid and flighty things like they've been saying all of this time. They've been allowed to sit up and say dumb things like, well, to use that voice that Crimson Cure is sick of, where everything sounds like it ends in a question. And I know that what I'm going to say sounds stereotypical, but gentlemen, brothers, you have to realize that when a cultural block of women says that they can read you and they can get you told and tell you about yourself because they saw you and they can look at you and do this, understand that you have every mother cuss word right to turn around and say the same to them based on actual behaviors. And how you speak is a behavior. As a matter of fact, it will be your most common behavior. Speaking like that in a childish, also always questioning voice doesn't necessarily show just femininity. I mean, it doesn't show masculinity, but it doesn't really show only femininity. It shows worse. It shows immaturity. And realize this, don't let Western women do what they want to do, which is to act like little girls in an effort to strike you as being more feminine. Don't let them do that. And here's why I say that. Being feminine does not mean that you don't have to grow up. Demand that they be adults and yet still be feminine. Now, this is going to be a rough one because that is a balance that they're going to have to tread. But they've demanded that we walk fine lines all the time. And you have every right to turn around and say stuff like this. And as a matter of fact, it's not a right. You have a duty, an obligation to hyper scrutinize Western women for things like that. Because she needs to act like an adult. She can't act like a kid. Okay, now she needs to stop because she's trying to act like a man. That's going to be a hard one for them, but you have to enforce that. Now that sounds unfair, and it probably is unfair if you applied that standard unfairly to a woman that wasn't going too far in either extreme anyway, but Western women do. It's either a dumb, ditzy little girl that you're going to get, especially if they look any kind of good. Hell, if they look good only to you and nobody else, they're going to do this. It's either the dumb, ditzy little girl or the man. Those are your options. To them, it's a joke. It's funny. It's hilarious. Always going back and forth between one extreme or the other because they look any kind of good. That's what they're taught to do. I told you in the West, they're trained to fight you, to go against you. They're trained to always give you a choice between one headache or another headache. Ain't no peace. And they may not even realize that they're trained this way, but when they do become aware of that, do they stop or do they keep going? We know the answer to that. As Mumia Obsidian Ali would say, to ask that question is to answer it. And it is. I am awfully sorry that it comes down to this, but it does. Um, that's part of the reason I tell you that you got to not start families in the West. There are all of these fake and false dichotomies that aren't even real. They're not realistic. And yet you're supposed to have to deal with them like they're the norm. Like there was never supposed to be anything better out there for you. That's literally how you've been pegged. And as jacked up as it is, that's the truth of the matter. You've been pegged like that, like because you're a guy and you're not a stereotype. And the thing is this is not really about Moriah Mills, it's about a behavior. But Moriah Mills now decided that after, and I heard that she was pretty much letting Wyatt smut her out on the camera. And if I'm not mistaken, they get some say-so in who they get to work with. So that means she chose them. So they get to smut her out on the camera. But then she wants Zion Williamson's commitment. Now that tells me something right there. Then to make matters worse, she turns around and she decides that now she's saved and please don't disrespect her anymore. You're a porn actress. And that's why I'm putting this one here on Odyssey and not YouTube. You're a porn actress. At the end of the day, you're an SLUT for fun. You think it's funny. That's what you decided to become. That's what you are. Could you have been any different? Yes, but you weren't going to be. She's hoping that she gets, of course, that sort of bailout. She's hoping for that. And that's going to be a story. And this is why it is that when you as a guy do get some sort of bailout or, there's something you did when you were young and you didn't get the consequence for it and you didn't have to face that, it's a bit different because you're likely to say, well, I did this, that, and the other. And you know what? I was lucky. You're more likely to say that unless you perceive, and probably so rightly, that you weren't actually lucky, but that rather the women chose you because of the dirty stuff you may have done. Now, some of you understand that and you stop saying, well, I was lucky. It's like, you know what? These broads ain't fit because the reason I have the choices I have is because of the dirt I did. But she is going to go and try to get the bailout. She's hoping for it at least. Sierra did not do nearly what she did, but Sierra got the bailout. And you notice that these broads are talking about Sierra like she's a standard, like Russell Wilson is a standard, and like that's what we need to be. They keep pointing at Russell Wilson as a standard for us, but they can't respect him. Sierra can't respect him. That's a Hollywood marriage. It may not be as bad as what it looks like to us, but it's still pretty bad. I wanted to point this out to you, gentlemen, because you see, when I tell you all no simping, and that we need to even so much as boycott simps, and that includes these simp dads, these DLPS suffering daughter dads. I say this largely because in the end, the worst deal for yourself and the best deal that you offer any broad is going to be the deal that all the others who know her will demand, even if they would never respect you for giving them that deal. They will all get together, and since Russell Wilson did to our appearance, even if this is not the way it worked out in their real lives, to our appearance on the outside, it appears that Russell Wilson swooped in and played stepdad before he got to be dad. And another born-again woman, Christian, named Nyla, who ran Red Film Diaries and has since passed away of cancer, said to us on Poor Man's podcast, when you become a stepdad before dad, these women cannot respect you. They cannot look at you with respect. You're a simp to them. You're low down. Something's wrong with you. That's what she said. So by her logic, Sierra can't respect Russell. And I do think that if this is not some major ploy, that's exactly what the walk this is. But even still, because it seems like this situation to us on the outside, what are all these other broads demanding? They are demanding that you take a deal for which they would never respect you if you took. Now, that's not warlike. I don't know what is. And this is why I tell you guys to refuse to even so much as patronize the businesses of the simps as much as you possibly can. This is why I tell you guys, go hard in the paint on these dads. Maybe you like the lady, you want to marry her, but then the dad shows up, the lady's reasonable, but dad's a jerk. Look, now son, you want to marry my daughter, and you probably a good dude. I got nothing to get you. I'm just letting you know I'm real protective of her. Yeah, okay, well, sir, now we're protective of her. Is that okay? And look, you can't never be broke, and you're gonna have to provide because I worked hard to provide. And if you can't be letting her go without, and, sir, could you slow your roll? She presented herself as being independent, liking me, but being independent. So I'm not in a position to deprive her of anything. It's not something. Apparently, it's not something I could do. So now we can focus on, am I her type, and is she my type? We can focus on these things. You see, you might have to actually sit up and say to her, listen, sweetheart, you're my type. The issue is him. And when he's like, what you mean? Oh, she's great, sir. I simply cannot approve of you as a father-in-law. And you walk the fight. And you can even say to him, oh, it's not because you love her, because you're looking out for her. That's not why. This other stuff. It's not because you have standards for a man to meet. It's not even that. It's what the standards are and what they're not. You forgot the substance, sir. Or even just the whole attitude and the demeanor. Because a lot of black fathers especially have this need to make you know that they tough and they ain't no punk. You don't even have to go through all of that. If he's being good to her and you get a chance to meet him, you don't even have to talk about what you gonna do if he breaks off. You don't have to go through all of that. That should be understood anyway. If she cries, it doesn't work out, okay, fine. If he harms her, naturally you're going to hurt him to protect your daughter. That makes sense. But that doesn't have to be said all the time. We got to be barking and growling a lot of times. Man, shuck that fit. I never forget when a good friend of mine asked me years ago, when I showed baby pics of my kids, and I mean even the newborn pics, and I smudged out the intimate bits of my daughters, and I blotted out the intimate bits of my son, blotted them out, because smudging would not have covered it up with the same effects. And I did this. And I showed some photos of them, and somebody said, why'd you blot out your son's junk? Didn't ask me that about my daughters, and I was like, say, bro, nobody's going to look at my kids nude unless you're going to marry them or you a doctor. It goes to my son and it goes to my daughter. Privacy shall remain intact. I'm not going to sit up here and advertise my son's junk because he's a boy and he's a babe. I'm not going to do that. Then nobody had to ask me the question about my daughters. And besides, I knew that one day the law or the environment might change and I might get picked up for something like that. Even if at the time it wasn't like that, but I knew things would change. You see, gentlemen, This is what I mean when I say we're not raised to have standards. And this, what we need to do is we need to start having standards, and they need to be rougher for the Western niches. Absolutely. When you're dealing with the Westerners, you have to start looking at things like how they speak. When Soraya in Germany speaks, her family's not Western, though she was born and raised in a Western country. She still went and competed for her black man. When you listen to her speak, she doesn't sound like a weak woman. She doesn't sound like she's masculine either. She sounds like an adult, mature woman. She doesn't end every sentence with a question tone. When you look at Westernicians, you will see that they will do this, whether it's Becky or Sapphire or Maria. If they're born, raised in the West, that's what they do. And you need to have standards that are based on that are based more on avoidance than finding somebody. If you're going to be in the West and you're talking to these Western women, those need to be your standards. You're not trying to find someone, you're trying to avoid the wrong one, because that's how the Western women approach it when they're young. They don't change to actually try to find someone till they hit the wall. It always has to be, when it's too late. Then they change their goal and orientation. They're actively looking for someone. When they are young and can have someone, they won't look. And they always look for what they can't have. When they're young, you got to be a celebrity. And you got to be able to pick her out of a crowd. That's what she's looking for. And then when she gets older, you got to want her old as she is. And not want a younger competition. And now you need to be even more well off than when she was younger. While she offers less. See, they shift their standards. It's all about avoidance when they're young, and then trying to trap someone with a bad deal when they're older, or even if they're not older, just used up. You have to focus on the reality of that and try to avoid them. And that's why when you're in the West, you start doing things like listen to how they sound when they talk. Can you talk like that? No. They're scrutinizing everything about you. Every hair on your head and the direction in which that hair not only faces, but grows naturally out of your scalp. They're focusing on all of this, and you sitting here trying to find somebody. You need to understand that they're trying to eliminate. And that's what you need to be doing. You got to approach them the same way, not really even approach them. You got to not approach them, but you got to approach the game the same way. It's about elimination. It's not about finding somebody when you're in the West. Not because you're 9AY, but because that's the mindset they have. So since they're all about elimination, they're not going to eliminate their own bad habits and bad traits. So you got to eliminate them for these things. When you go into other places where they understand that they can have standards, but they must also meet standards, that's where you can be a bit more relaxed. You can do more of a give and take because, as I stated, the mating market in the West is very warlike. And when you go into traditional areas, it's different. As a matter of fact, I think in Laos, there's a market where you got these young, beautiful women, but they're having a hard time finding dudes because due to a genetic factor, there are many more girls born than boys. And they're waiving dowries, they're offering to pay for weddings and things like that. It's hard for them to find dudes. They're cute, they're young. It's just a question of numbers. That's what it is in Laos. I forgot where this is supposed to be. And they get all traditionally dressed up and everything else. Now, I don't know what their religious beliefs are, and that is important when you're picking an actual spouse. I'm going to be honest, it really is. But I am going to state this, though. And this is something that I'm going to say to the Muslim dads out there. You got daughters. I mean, great. It's good that you do. They're a blessing. But I'm going to tell you this. I'm not letting y'all off the hook either. And I'm a Muslim daughter. I'm a Muslim daughter dad myself. And I'm telling you, if you were looking for a good dude for your daughters and you raised your daughters and you taught them well, fine. You're normal. And no one's going to blame you for that as long as you understand that it is give and take, like Imam Saad on YouTube, known as Amu Yum. He understands that. You know what? It is about a give and take. God is fair. God is just. He gets it. But a lot of these ladies don't get it, and they're sitting up here trying to make sure that they never are courted, or no poor man ever even looks at them and asks them, "Can I get in touch with your father?" Oh yeah, a lot of Muslim women in the West are the worst ones about trying to avoid poverty. The majority of the planet is poor. But they're sitting up here trying to shame men for trying to get married without having a whole lot of money. They're trying that, and their dads who know better. Dad might not have had much, but because he loves his daughter, he feels like she's entitled to a man that has more than he had. Ain't no entitlements like that. And these are Muslim women who are supposed to know better. But their model is Khadija, and Khadija, with the money, approached Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he didn't have it, and did it because he was honest, and turned down proposals from wealthier men. Or they love to tell you that that's their model, but when you start mentioning these things, and by the way, a lot of them will say, "Well, she was 40." Actually, there's some other hadiths that say she was 28. Just like there's a dispute about Aisha's age. May Allah be pleased with both of them. When she got married, but the evidence is 19, not 9. That's actually what the evidence shows. There's evidence of Khadija bin Khuwailid being 28, not 40, not what we would call post-war today. No, but 28 and wealthy. And she was also a widower, and she had kids. I mean, a widow, but she had kids. But you know what? She was a widow. Widow. These chicks want to sit back, not wear their hijab properly, don't want to be modest about anything, want to demand that you have a ton of money. And I think they deserve poverty myself, but they want to demand that you are far from it. But they never have to share you. They want good husbands for their friends too, but they don't want to share the men that qualify, while they disqualify the majority of men. And their dads are no different. You ain't gonna marry no other wife. Sir, that's really not up to you. And frankly, sir, you probably didn't raise her to not need the help. The hell are you looking for, man? Yeah. So I'm gonna say, even to you young Muslim brothers, you in the West, man, let them dads just wait and look and wait and look and wait. And as a matter of fact, go and talk to the sons of these same fathers and the brothers of these same ladies, and put them on the game and say, "Look, man, we're gonna get these skills, and we're gonna bounce the up out of here." And if they're like, "Well, I don't want to be used for a green card and all this other stuff," who said anything about being used for a green card? We ain't coming back to live, bruh. What you mean? That's not the goal. It doesn't work like that. You know what happens? You bring a wife back here. We ain't doing that. Oh, what you talking about doing then? Hijrah. It's a part of our faith anyway. So why not enact it so as to allow the family a better chance? I'm going to go ahead and tune in to the features now. Bilal at the features, and listen to this. I'm about 13 minutes late already, but I want to do that. I'm gone, but I wanted to let you all know that we've got to be actually very exclusive. I mean, the main thing I'm trying to get at here is that when you're in the West, you need to stop trying to find someone and try to exclude. And it's not terribly difficult, because, I mean, you're a guy and you're not going to be approached that often. And that's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. But you still do need to, when you pay attention to ladies, you need to look at the flaws, look for the flaws when you're in the West, because if you know what to look for, they're there. And that's why that's important. That's why I'm talking about this. It's not because I hate them. It's because I want what's better for you. And they're going to try to make sure you don't get it by training you when you're young to not eliminate while they eliminate. And then they come back and do the reach back, as AC calls it, shouts out to them, because they're ran through and used up and maybe even old. And once one of them succeeds in that, all the rest of them are going to demand that you fall for that, even though it's the funny thing. They will demand that you fall for this, even though they can't respect you if you do. And that's why it is that if you do get lucky, if you are a single dad, but you find a lady that's childless, so what? You're not sitting up here and taking that for granted. You were never trained to take that for granted. But if they have a child and they find a man that's childless, they tell all the rest of the bras to take this for granted. Demand it. I got it. You can get it too. And don't accept nothing less. Go ahead and have your kids with Pookie and then demand a childless man be responsible. Girl, look, I cheated with Pookie even when I had that man. But God kept me and that man together until I qualified for half. That's the story that they're going to tell each other. And that's why you got to be, that's why you have to focus on elimination. It's not hatred. It's just, you know what? We know what the game is. I wish it wasn't like that, but we know it is. They insisted on it. Not your fault, gentlemen. Thank you all for listening again. As always, black heart, black mind, black out, assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-select male power just because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day. On your way out of the jet black aircraft, once we dock at the gate, I would appreciate if you would press the link to the merchandise. I've been asking y'all to do it, and there's only been one sale. I finally got in touch with the young traveler. One sale. So please do so, and you can worry about the Cash App button for me later on. If you got extra left over, then feel free to punch the Cash App button and punch in only numbers that are going to be easy for you. Just that. Thank you for flying again with us on Jet Black Airways, where jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.